The espresso machine hissed as Adrian Vale reached for the dirty plate. Inside Miller's diner, late morning light cut through the front windows in pale gold bars, catching on chrome stools, chipped red vinyl, and the worn black and white tile Carla Miller had been promising herself she would replace for 3 years. Nobody looked twice at the man in the dark apron wiping tables with slow, careful hands. That was exactly how Adrian wanted it. At 52, Adrian Vale had spent most of his adult life entering rooms where people stood when he arrived. Boardrooms became quieter when he spoke. Lawyers returned his calls before the second ring. Companies changed direction because he signed his name at the bottom of a page. But at Miller's diner, nobody cared who he was. A trucker wanted more coffee. A little boy had dropped half a pancake under booth 7. And Carla Miller had handed Adrian a rag 20 minutes after he walked through the door and told him that if he was going to stand around, he might as well make himself useful. Adrian had accepted the rag. Now Carla looked up from the register. She was in her mid-30s, her dark hair pinned back, one sleeve rolled above the elbow, a pencil tucked behind her ear, and an old ledger open beside the cash drawer. Miller's diner had belonged to her family for nearly 3 decades. Her father, Frank Miller, had opened it with 12 stools, 6 booths, and enough borrowed money to keep him awake for 2 straight years. Carla had grown up inside those walls. She had done homework in booth 3, learned to make coffee before she learned to drive, and spent Saturday mornings counting quarters from the jukebox with her mother. Now the diner was hers. So were the debts. A supplier wanted payment by Friday. The freezer made a sound every morning that suggested it was considering retirement. 2 ceiling tiles had brown water stains from a roof repair Carla could not afford. And the business loan she had refinanced after her father became ill seemed to grow heavier every month. She ran one finger down the ledger. The numbers did not make sense. They had not made sense for weeks. "You missed a spot," she said. Adrian looked up. Carla tapped the counter with 2 fingers. A brown circle from somebody's coffee cup marked the laminate. Adrian took the rag from the sink and wiped it clean. A trucker near the window snorted into his pie. "Look at that," he said. Boss lady finally found herself a busboy. A few customers chuckled. Adrian did not turn. Carla did. "He's working, Earl. That's more than I can say for some people in here." The trucker raised both hands. "I'm a king. You've been eating the same slice of pie for 40 minutes. I'm pacing myself." "Then pace yourself quietly." A few more people laughed. Adrian hid the beginning of a smile. Carla caught it. "Something funny?" "No." "You smiled." I was stretching my face. "That sounds expensive." "It usually is." For half a second, Carla looked as though she might laugh. Then the kitchen bell rang. "Carla," called Luis Ortega, the cook. "I need table 4 out before table 4 becomes dinner." Carla grabbed 2 plates from the pass-through. Adrian reached for the 3rd. "I have it. You're supposed to be washing dishes." "I contain multitudes." Carla stared at him. "You definitely don't sound like a dishwasher. You never asked for references. You never asked for a paycheck. That should have worried you more." It did. She walked away before he could answer. Adrian watched her move through the dining room. She knew every regular by name. She remembered who wanted onions and who hated them. She refilled coffee before people asked. When an elderly customer counted bills twice before paying, Carla quietly removed the pie from his check and told him the register had made a mistake. The register had not made a mistake. Adrian noticed everything. That was why he was there. 6 weeks earlier, Vale Holdings had been approached about acquiring a controlling interest in Miller's Diner and the property beneath it. On paper, it was a small transaction, too small for Adrian Vale to care about personally. Except the reports had bothered him. Revenue had declined in strangely predictable increments. Repair expenses rose almost exactly when valuations were being calculated. Supplier costs increased without corresponding changes in volume. Every new problem pushed the business toward the same outcome: a lower price. Adrian had spent 30 years around numbers. Real businesses were messy. Fraud was often much neater. So that morning, instead of sending another analyst, Adrian had come himself. He had intended to order breakfast, watch the operation for an hour, and leave. Then Carla's waitress had called in sick. A stack of plates had begun leaning dangerously beside the sink. Carla had looked at Adrian standing near the counter and said, "You waiting for somebody?" "No. You know how to wash a plate?" "Yes." "Congratulations. You're promoted." That was how one of the wealthiest men in the city ended up wearing a diner apron with a faded tomato sauce stain near the pocket. And Adrian was learning more from the sink than he had learned from 3 weeks of reports. He was drying a coffee mug when the bell above the front door rang. Carla looked up. Her expression changed immediately. Derek Cole stepped inside. Derek had managed Miller's Diner for almost 4 years. He was 41, clean-cut, confident, and good at sounding helpful even when he was delivering bad news. Recently, he had delivered a great deal of bad news. His leather jacket was wet from the rain. "Afternoon, Carla." Carla glanced at the clock. "It's 12:14. "Close enough. What do you need?" Derek removed an envelope from inside his jacket and placed it beside the register. "The lender wants a partial payment today." Carla did not touch the envelope. "I was told Friday." "That changed." "By who?" "The servicing office." "When?" "This morning. And nobody called me." "I'm calling you now. You're standing in front of me. Then consider it premium service." Carla did not smile. Neither did Adrian. Derek noticed him. "Who's this?" "Temporary help," Carla said. Adrian returned to the sink. Derek leaned closer to Carla. "If the payment isn't received today, they can move forward with default procedures." Carla's face remained controlled, but Adrian saw her fingers tighten against the counter. "How much?" Derek tapped the envelope. "It's there." Adrian dried his hands. "How much?" he asked. Derek looked over. "I wasn't talking to you." "No, but you said it loudly. This is business." "Then the number should be easy to say." Derek's eyes narrowed. Carla gave Adrian a warning look. He ignored it and picked up the document. "Hey," Carla said. Adrian scanned the first page, then the second. The document looked official enough to frighten somebody in a hurry. That was probably the point. "This number is wrong," he said. Derek's expression changed. Carla stepped closer. "What?" Adrian pointed to the bottom of the page. "Administrative fee, property review fee, expedited processing fee." Derek folded his arms. "So, none of them appear in the financing schedule." Carla looked at Adrian. "How would you know that?" "Because the base amount and interest calculation are formatted differently from the added charges." He tapped the page, and these 3 were inserted using a different billing template. Derek gave a short laugh. "You a lawyer now?" "No. Accountant." "Not exactly." "Then put it down." Adrian returned the document to the counter. Carla read the charges. "I've never seen these." "Terms change," Derek said. "Not after a contract is signed," Adrian replied. Derek turned toward him. "You really like hearing yourself talk." "Not particularly." "Then go wash something." Adrian looked at Carla. She was no longer watching Derek. She was studying the paper. "Derek," she said slowly, "where did this come from?" "I told you. Servicing office." "Which one?" "The regional office." "Name?" Derek paused, only for a second, but Adrian saw it. "Carla, you're behind. That's the problem. Not the paperwork." "The paperwork is exactly the problem." Derek's voice hardened. "You have until close." The diner had become quiet. Even Earl had stopped eating his pie. Adrian reached for the landline beside the register. Carla looked at him. "What are you doing?" "Checking something." He dialed a number from memory. A man answered almost immediately. "Mr. Vale." Derek froze. Carla slowly turned toward Adrian. Adrian kept his eyes on Derek. "Thomas, suspend the Miller acquisition review. No funds move. No final documents are approved. Freeze everything until I authorize it." Silence filled the diner. "Yes, sir," Thomas replied through the receiver. "And bring the current valuation file." Adrian hung up. Carla stared at him. "Acquisition." Adrian untied the apron. "My name is Adrian Vale." She blinked. "Nothing." Then recognition arrived. "Vale." "Yes." "As in Vale Holdings?" "Yes." "The company trying to buy my diner?" "Acquire a controlling interest." "That is a very expensive way to say buy my diner." "Fair." Carla stared at the apron in his hands. "You're Adrian Vale?" "Yes." "And you have been washing my dishes?" "Yes." "Why?" Because somebody inside this transaction has been changing the numbers. Derek stepped forward. That is ridiculous. Adrian looked at him. I didn't say your name. Derek stopped. Carla noticed. So did everyone else. The bell above the door rang. 3 men in dark suits entered. The first was Thomas Reed, Adrian's chief of staff, gray at the temples and carrying a leather portfolio. Thomas stopped when he saw Adrian's apron. For one remarkable second, the professional mask disappeared. Not a word, Adrian said. Thomas recovered. Mr. Vale, the board has been waiting for nearly an hour. They can continue waiting. Sir, there are 9 people in the conference room. Then they can form a support group. Carla looked from Adrian to Thomas. Earl whispered to the man beside him. I like this guy. Thomas opened his portfolio. Adrian handed him Derek's document. Find out where these charges came from. Thomas scanned it. His expression became serious. These aren't in our acquisition file. I know. Derek moved toward the door. Adrian saw him. Stay. Derek stopped and turned. You don't tell me what to do. Carla folded her arms. And he doesn't get to order people around in my diner. Adrian looked at her. You're right. That answer seemed to surprise her more than his identity had. He nodded toward Derek. You decide. Carla looked at Derek. For years, she had trusted him with schedules, suppliers, deposits, and the dozens of details she could not handle alone. Now she remembered every time he had told her not to worry about a number. Every document he had offered to handle. Every late fee that seemed to arrive before she knew anything was late. Stay, she said. Derek's jaw tightened. Adrian picked up the apron. Carla stared. What are you doing? Finishing the lunch rush. You just froze a corporate acquisition. Yes. And now you're going back to dishes? Adrian tied the apron. There are 17 plates in the sink. Carla looked toward the kitchen. Luis leaned through the service window. 19. Adrian nodded. 19. For the first time all day, Carla almost laughed. Almost. The lunch rush lasted another 40 minutes. It was the strangest 40 minutes Miller's Diner had ever seen. Thomas Reed, chief of staff to Adrian Vale, sat in booth 2 with a laptop and 3 folders. The other 2 Vale employees took coffee at the counter. Derek remained near the register, pretending not to watch Thomas. Adrian washed dishes, and Carla kept serving customers because bills did not stop arriving just because a billionaire had revealed himself beside the coffee machine. When the crowd finally thinned, Carla locked the front door and turned the sign to closed. When not actually closed, Luis called. We are for 20 minutes. Can I eat? You've been eating fries for 4 hours. Quality control. Carla pulled the old ledger from beneath the register. She placed it in front of Adrian. If you really came here because the numbers were wrong, look at these. Adrian dried his hands and opened the book. The ledger was old-fashioned. Carla's father had trusted paper more than computers, and Carla had kept the habit. Daily totals were written by hand. Supplier payments appeared in black ink. Deposits were listed beside them. Several numbers had been corrected in red. Adrian turned a page. Then another. Who has access? Me and Derek. Derek immediately spoke. Half the staff uses the register. Carla looked at him. The staff can use the register. They cannot edit supplier records. Adrian examined one entry. Who handles invoice reconciliation? Derek. Bank deposits? Usually me. Sometimes Derek if I'm covering the kitchen. Supplier communication? Mostly Derek. Derek threw up his hands. That's my job. Adrian nodded. Exactly. Derek's face hardened. Carla opened a drawer and removed a rubber-banded stack of receipts. I started keeping originals. When? Adrian asked. About 2 months ago. Why? She hesitated. Because I thought I was losing my mind. The room changed. Carla looked down at the receipts. I would remember paying a supplier one amount. Then the ledger would show another. Derek would tell me I was exhausted or that I had confused 2 invoices. Derek scoffed. You were exhausted. I was. She looked at him. That doesn't mean I was wrong. Adrian took the first receipt. He compared it with the ledger. Original invoice, $2,840. Ledger entry, $3,490. He checked another. Original, $1,620. Ledger, $2,110. A third, same pattern. Small enough differences to hide inside a struggling business. Large enough to matter over time. Adrian placed the documents side by side. Someone has been inflating expenses. Thomas moved closer. Adrian continued. The higher expenses make operating margins look worse. That weakens the valuation. It also creates cash shortages that can be blamed on the business itself. Carla looked at Derek. What? Derek shook his head. This proves nothing. Adrian turned to Thomas. Pull the first valuation and the latest one. Thomas opened his laptop. A minute later, two reports appeared side by side. The original estimate had valued Miller's Diner and its property substantially higher. The most recent estimate was lower. Much lower. Carla leaned toward the screen. Her face went still. That's what you offered me. Thomas looked uncomfortable. Yes. Carla turned toward Adrian. Your company benefits. Yes. Derek smiled. There it was. The seed he needed. Carla stepped back from the counter. So maybe this is your plan? Thomas started to speak. Adrian lifted one hand. No. Carla deserved the answer directly. She looked at Adrian. You show up pretending to be nobody. You find a problem. Then suddenly your company gets to decide what my diner is really worth. If this were my plan, I would not have frozen the transaction. That doesn't prove anything. No. Adrian closed the ledger. It doesn't. Carla waited. Adrian met her eyes. That's why we prove it. For the next hour, Miller's Diner stopped being a restaurant. It became an audit room. Carla spread supplier receipts across 3 tables. Thomas compared the acquisition records with the diner's internal statements. Adrian reconstructed cash totals month by month. Louise came out of the kitchen carrying a basket of fries. Anybody? Nobody answered. He took one. More for me. Carla checked employee schedules against register shortages. Something else emerged. The largest cash discrepancies happened on days when Carla left early. Those were also the days Derek closed. Carla sat back. No. Adrian looked over. What? She showed him the dates. My father had physical therapy on Tuesdays. Derek said nothing. For 3 months, I left at 4 every Tuesday. She pointed at the records. Almost every large shortage happened Tuesday night. Derek laughed. You're looking for patterns because he told you to. Carla stood. I'm looking because I should have looked sooner. Carla. No. Her voice was quiet. That made it stronger. I trusted you. Derek looked away. Thomas called from booth 2. Mr. Vale. Adrian crossed the room. Thomas pointed to a digital copy of an invoice. There's an authorization field. A 6-digit manager code appeared at the bottom. Carla saw it. Her face changed. That's Derek's. Derek stood. It doesn't mean anything. Thomas looked at him. It means the invoice was modified using your credentials. Someone could have used my login. Carla shook her head. You changed the password 2 months ago. Derek said nothing. You complained about staff knowing it, Carla continued. You changed it and told me only you knew the new one. That doesn't mean. The bell above the front door rang. Everyone turned. A woman in a navy suit stood outside the locked door, holding a manila envelope. Thomas crossed over and let her in. Helena, Adrian said. Helena Voss, senior compliance officer for Vale Holdings, walked to the counter. Rainwater darkened the shoulders of her coat. I found the hold request. Derek's face lost color. Adrian noticed. Helena placed the envelope down. The acquisition didn't stall because Ms. Miller failed to provide documents. Carla looked at her. What do you mean? Helena removed a printed form. Someone submitted an internal compliance flag claiming Miller's Diner had undisclosed liabilities. Carla frowned. I don't have undisclosed liabilities. We know that now. Helena turned the form around. At the bottom was an electronic authorization. Derek Cole. Carla read the name. Once. Then again. You did this. Derek looked toward the door. Carla stepped between him and the exit. She was not threatening him. She did not need to. She looked tired. More than tired. Finished. You spent months telling me this place was failing. Carla. You told me suppliers were raising prices. They were. You told me fees were normal. Some were. You told me I forgot conversations. You were under pressure. You made me think I was losing what my parents built. Derek's voice sharpened. You were losing it. The words hung in the room. Carla did not move. Derek looked at Adrian. He was going to buy it anyway. Adrian's expression remained still. Not like this. Derek gave a bitter laugh. Business is business. No, Adrian said. Business is an agreement between people who know what they are agreeing to. He pointed to the altered records. This is deception. Derek looked around the room. You think Vale Holdings is some charity? He wanted this property. Everybody knows what this block will be worth in 5 years. Carla slowly turned toward Adrian. That was new. What does he mean? Thomas looked at Adrian. Adrian answered. There is a redevelopment proposal for the surrounding district. Carla stared at him. And you knew? Yes. How long? Before our first offer. Her face hardened again. You left that out. It was public information. That isn't what I asked. Adrian paused. No, we did not emphasize it. Carla laughed once without humor. So Derek was cheating me, and your company was technically telling the truth. Adrian absorbed the accusation. Yes. Thomas looked uncomfortable. Helena said nothing. Carla walked behind the counter. My father used to say there are 2 ways to lie. You can say something false, or you can make sure the other person never asks the right question. Adrian looked at her. Your father was right. Did you come here to save me, Mr. Vale? No. Good. She turned. Because I don't need saving. Adrian nodded. I came because I believe someone was manipulating the transaction. And now I know 2 things. What? Derek manipulated your books. He paused. And my company benefited from information you did not fully understand. Thomas shifted. Sir. Adrian ignored him. Carla waited. So what are you going to do? Adrian turned to Helena. Preserve every record. Send copies to counsel. Notify the lender that the disputed charges are being challenged. And send the altered invoice trail to the appropriate financial investigators. Helena nodded. Derek stared at him. You can't do that. I already did. You'll destroy me. Adrian's voice remained level. You made choices. Other people will decide what those choices mean. He looked at Carla. What happens to him inside this diner is yours. Carla removed a small ring of keys from her pocket. She held out her hand. Manager keys. Derek stared at her. Carla, give them to me. You're emotional. Something changed in her face. For months, Derek had used that word whenever she challenged a number. Tired, emotional, confused, overwhelmed. Words designed to make doubt sound like evidence. Carla held her hand steady. Keys. Derek hesitated. Then he dropped them into her palm. You're fired. Luis appeared in the kitchen doorway. He said nothing. Neither did Thomas. Derek looked around as if expecting somebody to defend him. Nobody did. He walked to the door. Carla unlocked it. Before leaving, Derek turned toward Adrian. You think you won? Adrian shook his head. This was never a game. Derek left. The bell above the door gave one small, ordinary chime. Carla locked it again. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Luis held up the fries. Now, Carla laughed despite herself. Go back to the kitchen, Luis. Taking that as a yes. He disappeared. The tension broke just enough for everyone to breathe. Carla looked at Adrian. What happens to the sale? Adrian took the acquisition agreement from Helena's envelope. That depends on what you want. You're the buyer, and you're the owner. He placed the signed final approval page on the counter. The current deal is suspended. Carla studied him. Suspended or canceled? Suspended until you decide. And the valuation? Recalculated from clean books. And the redevelopment? Fully disclosed in the new negotiation. If there is one. Carla leaned against the counter. And if I tell you to walk away? I walk away. Thomas looked at Adrian. Sir. Adrian did not turn. Thomas tried again. The board authorized the acquisition based on strategic value. I know. They will not be pleased. They rarely are. Carla studied Adrian. You would really walk away? Yes. From a property your company wants? Yes. Why? Adrian looked around Miller's diner. The chip booths. The handwritten specials board. The old photographs near the register. The pie case with one stubborn light that flickered every 6 minutes. Because owning something and taking something are not the same. Carla said nothing. Adrian continued. My father owned a machine shop. That surprised her. He did. 23 employees. 2 loading bays. Terrible coffee. What happened? A larger company wanted the land. Carla waited. They made him an offer when the business was struggling. He accepted. Did they cheat him? No. Adrian looked toward the rain-streaked window. They didn't have to. He was tired. He was scared. And nobody told him what the land would become worth after a highway project was approved. Carla's expression softened slightly. What did you do? I was 19. I told him he should have known better. Carla winced. I know. You regret it. Every day. Adrian looked at her. He wasn't stupid. He was exhausted. There's a difference. Carla glanced at the ledger. Yes. For the first time since learning who he was, she saw something other than power when she looked at Adrian Vale. She saw memory. Not weakness. Memory. The kind that changed how a person behaved years later. Thomas closed his laptop. Mr. Vale, the board is calling again. Adrian's phone vibrated on the counter. He looked at the screen. Ignored it. Carla raised an eyebrow. Do billionaires normally ignore their boards? Only before dinner. You're a billionaire? Adrian looked at Thomas. Thomas suddenly became very interested in his laptop. Carla shook her head. You washed dishes for 4 hours. They were dirty. That is not an explanation. It has been sufficient so far. Carla smiled. A real one this time. Then she looked at the diner. For months, every object had felt like something she was about to lose. The register her father taught her to use at 16. The coffee machine her mother insisted was worth repairing even when buying a new one would have been cheaper. Booth 3, where Carla had done algebra homework. The narrow kitchen doorway, where her parents used to argue about baseball. She had nearly signed all of it away because she believed she had no choice. Now she knew the numbers had lied. But numbers were not the only problem. Fear had done some of the work too. What if the clean valuation is still bad? She asked. Adrian did not soften the answer. Then we deal with the real problem. No miracle. No. No secret billionaire check. No. Good. He almost smiled. Carla continued. I don't want somebody buying this place just because they can afford to. Then don't sell it. I may need an investor. Then find one whose terms you can live with. You volunteering? I'm available for interviews. That apron is hurting your chances. I thought it showed initiative. It shows marinara. Adrian looked down. She was right. Late afternoon sunlight began breaking through the clouds outside. Carla unlocked the door and turned the sign back to open. A couple waiting beneath the awning stepped inside. Everything okay? The woman asked. Carla looked at the tables covered in invoices. At Thomas with his laptop. At Helena holding a compliance folder. At Adrian Vale wearing a stained apron. Perfectly normal Tuesday. It's Thursday. Louise called from the kitchen. Carla closed her eyes. Thank you, Louise. You're welcome. The customers laughed and took a booth. Business resumed. Not because the problems were gone. They were not. The loan still existed. The freezer still sounded terrible. The roof still needed repair. But for the first time in months, Carla knew which problems were real. That mattered. An hour later, Helena and the 2 Vale employees left with copies of the records. Thomas remained near the door. Sir, we really do need to go. Adrian nodded. 5 minutes. Thomas looked at the sink. You said that 20 minutes ago. I was optimistic. Carla poured coffee into a clean mug and set it in front of Thomas. You want to know the trick? Thomas looked at her. What trick? Stop asking. Thomas considered this. Then sat down. Carla returned to the ledger. Adrian approached the counter. I should leave. Probably. He placed his business card beside the register. Carla looked at it. Adrian Vale. Vale Hodges. Simple black lettering. No explanation of how a man whose name appeared on skyscrapers had spent his afternoon scraping dried syrup from ceramic plates. No secret identities next time, she said. No operating. I didn't say that. Adrian smiled. He stepped toward the door. Mr. Vale. He turned. Carla held up the card. If we renegotiate, Miller's stays Miller's. Non-negotiable. I keep control. Yes. No hidden redevelopment advantage. Everything disclosed. No changing numbers without me seeing them. Agreed. And Derek's mess gets separated from the actual value of the business. Yes. Carla considered him. One more thing. Adrian waited. If you ever come into my diner pretending to be unemployed again, I'm paying you minimum wage. Thomas coughed into his coffee. Adrian looked at Carla. Harsh. Business is business. He laughed. Then his expression became more serious. Carla, yes. Whatever you decide, make the decision because it is yours. She looked at the ledger, then at the diner. I intend to. Adrian opened the door. The bell chimed. He stepped outside. Thomas followed. They reached the black sedan parked across the street. Thomas opened the rear door. Adrian did not get in. He looked back through the diner window. Carla was taking an order from booth 4. Luis rang the kitchen bell. Earl had somehow returned and was eating another slice of pie. The place looked ordinary. That was the point. Businesses were often reduced to valuations, margins, assets, liabilities, and projected returns. But those numbers never showed who had learned algebra in booth 3. They did not show whose father had installed the counter. They did not show who quietly removed a pie from an elderly customer's bill. Adrian had spent a career believing numbers told the truth. They did, but only when people allowed them to. Thomas waited beside the car. Sir, Adrian looked at him. Rework the proposal. Thomas sighed. I knew you were going to say that. Carla keeps majority control. The board will object. Probably. We disclose the redevelopment upside. They will definitely object. Yes. And we remove the distressed asset discount. Adrian nodded. Thomas closed his eyes briefly. Anything else? Capital for the freezer. Thomas looked confused. The freezer? It sounds like it's dying. You want me to put a freezer in a multi-million-dollar investment proposal? Yes. Thomas stared at him. Adrian finally got into the car. Thomas followed. As the sedan pulled away, Adrian looked back once. Inside the diner, Carla reached beneath the counter and found his apron folded beside the sink. She picked it up. The faded stain was still there. Luis leaned through the service window. He coming back? Carla looked toward the street. I don't know. Luis nodded toward the sink. He left dishes. Carla smiled. Then I guess he has to. 3 weeks later, Adrian Vale returned to Miller's Diner. This time he wore a charcoal suit. No these guys. No secret inspection. No corporate entourage. Carla saw him through the front window and pointed at the door before he even entered. We're open. I saw the sign. Just checking. You have trouble with obvious information. I've been told. He stepped inside. The diner looked almost the same. Almost. A new freezer hummed quietly behind the kitchen wall. One ceiling tile had been replaced. A small framed newspaper clipping hung beside the register. It announced that Miller's Diner would remain independently controlled under a new minority investment agreement. Carla had negotiated for 11 days. She had rejected Adrian's first proposal, then his second. By the fourth, Thomas Reed had started bringing antacid to meetings. The final agreement gave Vale Holdings a minority stake and a defined return. Carla retained control. The diner retained its name. Future property appreciation was shared under terms Carla's independent attorney had reviewed line by line. And every financial statement went to both parties at the same time. No hidden numbers. No hidden advantage. Adrian stopped at the counter. Carla slid a document toward him. What's this? Your employee evaluation. He looked at her. I don't work here. According to Luis, your dishwashing speed is below expectations. Luis shouted from the kitchen. Too much talking. Adrian looked at the paper. At the bottom, Carla had written, strengths. Follows instructions eventually. Weaknesses, expensive shoes. Secretive, slow with pants. Adrian looked up. Carla was trying not to smile. Anything else? Yes. She placed a clean dark apron on the counter. You missed a spot. Adrian looked toward the coffee ring beside her hand, then at the apron, then at Carla. Outside, afternoon traffic moved past the windows. Inside, the espresso machine hissed. Adrian removed his suit jacket. Thomas Reed, who had just entered behind him, stopped in the doorway. No. Adrian rolled up his sleeves. Thomas pointed toward him. We have a meeting. Adrian tied the apron. We always have a meeting. The board is waiting. Carla handed Adrian the rag. He looked at Thomas. They can continue waiting. Carla laughed. This time, Adrian did too. And Miller's Diner kept running. Not because someone powerful had rescued it. Not because every problem disappeared. It kept running because the truth finally reached the ledger because Carla regained a right to make her own decision, and because Adrian Vale learned that sometimes the best way to understand the value of a business was not to study it from the top floor of a glass tower. Sometimes you had to stand behind the counter, listen to the people, read every number, and wash the dishes yourself.